So, what is your measuring cup? It's a good question in today's gospel, because the measure with which we measure will in return be measured out to us. So I remember in my own life growing up, I had a very interesting way of measuring my siblings' chocolate cake pieces. It's kind of twisted justice, because I had this superhuman ability of understanding even the smallest millimeter that was off. And if my siblings had an even slightly bigger piece, I would hit my hands on the table and I would say, "Mom, Dad, they have a bigger piece than me. I feel left out. It's unjust. You need to take a little bit off of theirs to equalize it. Equality for all." But when I had the bigger piece of cake, then I would just quietly eat it with relish, knowing that I had the better piece, and all of my siblings were lesser than me in cake power. Maybe you've had that kind of distorted justice, that sense of me first, everyone else second. Maybe that's the measuring rod sometimes that we use. Or maybe it's, I will be nice to you if you'll be nice to me. I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. That's what Jesus is saying today, saying that's what everybody does. He uses this word, even the sinners love those who love them. Even the sinners lend to sinners and get back the same amount. It means basically that's what everyone does in the world. But the Lord has given us His Holy Spirit, and He's calling us to live differently. The second reading talks about the first Adam is an earthy Adam. He's living out of that power. The second Adam, Jesus, is living the supernatural power. And if we have been part of His mystical body through baptism, He's given us the power and capacity to live in a way that we can't do on our own. And so we have to look at our own lives to say, am I living my life in such a way that I'm just sort of floating on with everybody else and the way that everybody else treats everybody else? Or am I truly living this powerful gospel of mercy that has the power to do the impossible? Something for us to think about. Are we truly, when we give generously, are we giving in such a way that deep down inside, we're mad or we're slighted if they don't give us something equal or better back? So maybe you've bought a present for a birthday party. It's this amazing video game, and you bring it there, you give it to them. They're so excited about it, but when it's your birthday, they give you socks. And you're like, "Oh, thank you. I'm glad." But maybe deep down inside, you're like, I did all of this for them, and they just give me socks? That's it? Nothing more? If that happens within us, even if someone doesn't send a thank you note, you've given something, it's amazing. Look at how awesome you are. Pat yourself on the back. But then they don't give you a thank you note. And maybe you're like, they should have at least acknowledged it. Now, yes, thank you notes are wonderful and it's good, but to think about if we're kind of fueled by this sense of, I'm giving, but deep down inside, I'm giving to the extent that you give back. But look at Jesus. He's up there on the cross, and He didn't say, are you going to give me a thank you note? Then I'll pour out my blood and water upon you. He pours it out first as a complete, generous gift, a gift without conditions. And He's not only doing it to people that, when we give birthday gifts and things like that, we're giving it generally to people who like us, and we like them. But He's saying, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Jesus is giving a gift, and He's giving to people that spat in His face saying, I hate you. And He's like, okay, I love you. This is the kind of love that can shake even the strongest of dark strongholds. Whenever Christians live this out powerfully, it has profound effects. And I was recently reminded, there are many times in history, whether it's in the time of the Roman persecuted Christians, whether it's the Amish community during a terrible tragedy in which many people died at the hands of a killer. They embrace the mother of this person. They go to the funeral. They actually take care of her economically. And they say, well, this is what Christ would want us to do. There's one that I remember hearing recently that really just struck me. And it's this man. His name is Daryl Davis. And he's a Christian, and he lives this out in a very, very radical way. So he is a black man. He's originally from Africa. He was part of a diplomat family. And he would go back and forth with his family. But when he was 10, he came to the United States, and he joined a Cub Scout troop in Massachusetts. And he was the only one who was black in this Cub Scout group. So as they're going on a little procession, a little parade, there's a group of white supremacists that are watching the parade. They see this poor child, and they start throwing glass bottles at him. One of them actually hits him in the head, causes him serious injury. He's 10 years old, and he doesn't understand why did this happen to him. So his dad talks to him about this painful reality of racism. And in his mind, he's asking that question: why would someone hate me if they've never ever met me or talked to me? Like, he doesn't understand how that even works. And that started to open up something in his own life to say, because he was a Christian and he heard these readings, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you. And so he rejected the response of saying, well, I'm going to throw a glass bottle back at them. Instead, what he would do is he would say, I need to find ways that there's this hatred being poured out to me, but they don't even know who I am. So I need to find ways to be in situations where I can grow friendship with people that are hating me. It's this radical, you should read his story. It's very inspirational. So he ends up, he's actually a very famous musician. He played with Chuck Berry, that's one of his friends, Little Richard. He played a lot of the boogie-woogie kind of piano and blues. So he was once at a country bar that was known to be just an all-white country bar, no one else allowed. And there was this man who came up to him saying, you know, for a black man, you are probably the best one I've ever heard. You sound like Chuck Berry. And he's like, well, actually, I played with him and I helped him be able to learn what this kind of soul music is. So the guy's like, really? So Daryl invites this man in the bar there to have a beer. And he finds out that this man is one of the members of the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. It's like, oh, interesting, okay. So they start having a friendship. And he starts reaching out to them, reaching out to this person saying, hey, you want to go out to a restaurant? You want to hang out? And he's just reaching out, trying to let this person get to know him, because this man who starts to ascend the ladders and becomes the grand wizard in Maryland of the Ku Klux Klan, he ultimately, in time, through this friendship, he meets this man, Daryl, and he says, wait a minute, even though I hate everyone else that's a different color except for you, because I know you. And little by little, that starts to then wear away his prejudices, and he leaves the Ku Klux Klan. And guess what he does? He takes his robes that he had, he gives them to Daryl, his friend, saying, because of this friendship, because you were willing to reach out to me, even when I hated you, I'm actually walking away from this completely. And so Daryl, this fellow, has been on a mission to destroy the Ku Klux Klan by friendship. He just keeps reaching out to different people. He talks with them, he builds friendship, and they don't really know what to do, because a lot of times they've never ever met someone who's Daryl. They've never met someone of brown or black skin. And they've just been taught this sense of they're the enemy, they're evil, we need to destroy them. And now he's reaching out and he's loving his enemies. And he has, I think, 20 or 30 different robes of some of the great wizards of the Ku Klux Klan, and they've all given them to him saying, you're the reason why I'm walking away from this hateful institution. It's powerful, it's profound. He actually became the godfather of one of the leaders' children when they were baptized. And there was another one who he helped him when he was in jail. Darrell helped this man who was a violent extremist. He was in jail, so he actually helped him in the midst of jail. That man, who was, again, a major Ku Klux Klan general kind of person, he said, I want you to take my daughter and you walk her down the aisle at her wedding. Very profound. If you look him up, you'll see these moments where you have these guys that are hooded in their white robes, and you have this man who's just right in the midst of them, and it's like, wait, this doesn't make sense. And yet he's breaking the barriers by saying, I'm going to love and I'm going to walk across the aisle to share Christ by actually responding in mercy, in forgiveness, and growing in friendship that ultimately leads to helping these men let go of this broken institution of the Ku Klux Klan. It's a powerful modern-day example of what's possible when you take this seriously. It can destroy strongholds that are horrible. So think about in your own life. Maybe you might not be called to that particular ministry. Maybe you might in some sort of way. But how are you called to walk across the aisle and to share love when you experience hatred, fear, rejection, all of those things? Do you pick up the glass bottle that someone has thrown at you? Or do you, in a sense, drop that and offer the olive branch of peace? This is one of the things that our Lord would say to St. Faustina. Mankind will not have peace until it turns with trust to my mercy. So how is the Lord calling you to break the cycle of racism, of brokenness, of violence, of all of these different things? How are you called to stand in the gap? How are you called to live the Christian difference? Not to just go down the stream in your canoe as everyone else is, but to valiantly say, I choose Christ and I paddle against the current. And that's where grace occurs.